I can't do this, Sam. I know. It's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here, but we are. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo. The ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and anger, they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, a shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come. When the sun shines, it will shine out of the clearer. And those were the stories that stay with you. That meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back. Only they didn't. They kept going. Because they were holding on to something. What are we holding on to, Sam? That there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo. And it's worth fighting for. Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I am here with a brand new epic movie review. And this epic movie review is going to be for the second installment of a trilogy I'm currently reviewing, as we are approaching the final installment of the trilogy. And that film is going to be for a film from 2002. It's a fantasy film. It's a follow-up to the film I reviewed last week. And it's the second installment of this trilogy. And that film is going to be for none other than 2002's The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, which is also directed by Peter Jackson, like the rest of them. So what's the plot of this one? Well, the continuing quest of Frodo and the Fellowship to destroy the One Ring continues. Frodo and Sam discover that they are being followed by the mysterious creature known as Gollum, who was once a hobbit known as Smeagol. And Aragorn, the elf archer Legolas, and Gimli the dwarf encounter the be-designed Rowan kingdom, whose once great King Theoden has fallen under Saruman's deadly spell. So, that's the plot. And when it came to how it was made, you should all know, Fellowship Towers Return were all shot back to back. And more about this one, though. Like, when Alan Lee joined the Lord of the Rings in late 1997, Helm's Deep was the first structure he was tasked to design. At a 1.35 scale, it was one of the first miniatures built for the film. And it was part of the 45-minute video that sold the project to New Line Cinema. And it got primarily drawn from an illustration Lee once had done for the book. And though the curved wall feature in the film was proposed by film instructor and designer John Howe, used in the film for wide shots, and Jackson would use the miniature to plan the battle and use 40,000 toy soldiers. And Helm's Deep, which was a pivotal part of the film's narrative, was built at Dry Creek Quarry with its gate, a ramp, a wall, and included the removable section as well as the tower on a second level. It was a 1 to 4 scale miniature at Helm's Deep that ran 50 feet wide and was used for forced perspective shots and major explosions and the major explosion sequence. And this movie also explores the armies of Middle-earth here, and John Howe is the basic designer of the evil forces of Middle-earth, with the Uruk-hai being the first army approved by Jackson, and now also designed a special crossbow on the Uruk-hai characters, which is significant because it did not require external tools to rim. And the design was a realization of a 16th century manuscript, and also created 100 elven suits of armor, for which emphasis was placed on autumnal colors due to the theme of elves leaving Middle-earth. 250 suits were also made for the Roram. The designs of Rome were based on Jamaican Anglo-Saxon patterns, and most of the weapons were designed by John Howe and forged by Peter Lyon. Each sword took 3 to 6 days to make. In the exterior of the Romanist capital of Edoras, including its thatched roofs, took like 6 months to build on Mount Sunday, and the interior of the buildings doubled as offices and lunch halls. The interior of the hall then got filmed at Stone Street Studios with tapestry designed by Lee, and Theoden's wooden throne was partially created by his daughter, and Hill endured heavy makeup for the possession of the scene where his skin was pulled back and released for increased wrinkles. And Brad Dourif, the actor who plays Grimma Wormtongue, shaved off his eyebrows and put potato flecks as dandruff in his hair for an unnerving effect. And when it comes to Frodo and Sam scenes in this movie, we even get a look at Mordor and Gondor, and it's a fully seen and attractive shot, and deals with how called a mockery of Gothic cathedrals. And he and Lee created a Black Gate, also Goliath, which was a ruined city reflecting London during the Blitz of Berlin in 1945. So, after all that detail, the Two Towers was shot back to back with the other two, and would go on to be released the next year after Fellowship of the Ring by New Line Cinema. And also, like the others, was filmed in New Zealand. So, the year after Fellowship, this one would premiere on December 5th, 2002 at the Ziegfeld Theater in New York City, and then went on to be released to the public on December 18th, 2002 in the United States, and December 19th, 2002 in New Zealand. And, much like Fellowship of the Ring, this movie was also acclaimed by both critics and audiences, and they also considered to be a landmark in filmmaking and an achievement in the fantasy film genre. The movie got praise for its direction, action sequences, performances, musical score, and CGI, especially the CGI for Gollum they praised the most. And at the box office, it made even more than the Fellowship of the Ring, because it made $936 million worldwide. And it was the highest grossing film of 2002. At the time of its release, it was the third highest grossing film of all time behind Philosopher's Stone and Titanic. And following some reissues, though, it's made up to $947 million. And like every other film in this trilogy, it's also recognized as one of the greatest and most influential films ever made, and one of the greatest sequels in cinema history. It got numerous accolades as well, and was nominated for 6 awards this time. Best Picture, but it only won 2, which was Best Sound Editing and Best Visual Effects. Now, as for my reaction, well, much like the other two in the trilogy, this film was a masterpiece in cinema, and one of the greatest films in cinema, and one of the greatest fantasy movies and sequels ever made. This film is another phenomenal entry, and a perfect middle half of the story that evenly splits the Fellowship into several groups, or 3. You have one group, which is Frodo and Sam, on their journey to Mordor, meeting Gollum, and Gollum accompanies them. The second group is Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, now being joined by the still-alive Gandalf, except now he's Gandalf the White instead of the Grey. And of course, the movie literally starts revealing that Gandalf did not die when he fell off that bridge. And the third group is Merry and Pippin, who we last saw being captured, have escaped the orcs, and are now being joined by Treebeard. Now, this is definitely one of those films that's somewhat darker than Fellowship of the Ring, and it can be the most uncomfortable of the 3 at times. The Two Towers is also, there's at times when it has the most powerful emotions. The themes are morality, sacrifice, friendship, and the nature and just use of power. Many have commented on Tolkien's religious beliefs and premonition throughout The Lord of the Rings. But it's worth noting that the great scholar used components of many different cultures and belief systems to create the world he portrays. From a strict Roman Catholic perspective, there's many more blasphemies in Lord of the Rings where there are Catholic metaphors and symbols. In The Two Towers, the internal power struggle between good and evil gains momentum within the Fellowship's principal protagonists. As with the Fellowship, the art direction, score, and soundscaping subtly add great depth to the entire experience. And the One Ring begins to literally deepen its spell over Frodo in this one, and he questions his worthiness and stomach for the mission. The fact of his character allowing Sam to portray his devotion and loyalty to his master, particularly when Gollum makes his appearance and becomes their guide. And Gollum's looks are literally rivaled only by his treachery and the duality of his personality. We get some emphasis on the tortured conversations he has with himself, between either his actual personality Smeagol and his ring-possessed personality Gollum. It's like, and I really like the way Gollum is portrayed in The Two Towers. In the first film, he's just a cameo appearance as this black cave den he's in that mostly resembles Tolkien's description corresponded to the mental image many readers would take away. We never really saw him. We just saw his eyes looking through a hole at them and just slowly following them. At the same time, there's almost a comic element to it, whereas his physical features presented here are more accurately allowed for a menacing but tortured creature. Even more fantastic creatures find CGI in the film. Like, the presentation of the ants is masterfully done well. The elephants were also a neat touch, and I like to see them, and I definitely liked their designs, and of course the orcs, wargs, and Yurk all have personified the evil that befalls Middle Earth in the dire time. Their presence instills fear and dread for the heroes all along the way. And the writing directing, since this was shot back to back with the other two, it equals Fellowship, and that the continuity remains. Never feeling like we missed any key moments in the plot, even though there's mainly some off pacing and events that will lead up to return. It's the vast expansion of Rosam's journey to Mordor. It's aided by the Insidious Golem. The changes and omissions are once again necessary to provide this decent pace and focus on the ever-rising tension of what all it leads up to. Like the Battle of Helm's Deep, for example, is what this all leads up to. With this massive battle near like the final 30 to 40 minutes of the film, there's plenty more to keep a viewer attached to the screen. And we fully see the massive software at work. The special effects incorporated with the miniatures and big archers are dazzle the eyes and flawless execution as 10,000 Uruk-hai soldiers lay siege to a seemingly impenetrable fortress, and from the Magi elephants to the felled beasts upon which the ringworms ride, we are given the introduction of creatures that play major roles in the following film. Yeah, because these creatures, you get to see them in action in the next movie. They're getting ready for that battle, which you'll find out in that review. There's just a lot of things that go on in this movie, unlike the more calmed down tone of the first film, where it just went by slowly to introduce us to the Fellowship. This one has a lot of things going on, and the repeated viewings make it helpful with an understanding that was created when you read Tolkien's story. And though it's not entirely necessary to enjoy the movie, I feel like it definitely grounds the viewer in the rich background of the characters and locations. And books of the film complement each other nicely. And even though the movie of necessity must leave out some elements. And the opening scene of The Two Towers, it provides an outstanding and very brief taste of action, cinematography, the special effects, which only get matched and surpassed in the final hour of the film. We have the stunning events of the third hour of The Two Towers that are undeniably the centerpiece of the film and the signature scene of the movie. The first 2 hours are just kind of served fine as like the story developments, and they're just there to kind of build anticipation for the final hour, which is definitely the Battle of Helm's Deep. More than anything else, like the first 2 hours just tease and torment the patient audience. It's kind of saying that it's such a gap has to exist between the first minute and the final hour. But I take no reservations in saying that despite how you feel about the first 2 hours of the film, the final hour just makes the wait entirely worth its while. And as stated, like the road to the Battle of Helm's Deep for this whole movie is enormously long and painful for any viewer aware of what breathtaking scenes await towards the end of the film. Like, The Two Towers' biggest fault is in its own accomplishments. Like, the first 2/3 of the film are well shot, well paced, and they're necessary and adequately progress the storyline. But when you compare it to the spectacular final hour, the first 2 hours seem uneventful and insignificant. But to be fair, it's just simply impossible to create 2 hours of film that can appropriately lead to the Battle of Helm's Deep. It's difficult to comprehend how such scenes came to exist the rather short amount of time Peter Jackson had to create 6 hours of finished film. Well, if you include the extended editions, that would probably be 11 hours. Or like, we combine the whole trilogy. And the Battle of Helm's Deep is just unreal. It's just unlike the Battle of Helm's Deep. It's like any event that would come to pass in the fantasy genre, and it helped the fantasy genre regain its popularity. Here, like, there's a reason why people call the Battle of Helm's Deep one of the best battles in cinematic history. right there. It's just a phenomenal battle to watch. It even got some great quotes too. And like the Two Towers, as assumed, it literally begins right where the Fellowship of the Ring ended. The majority of the film, we follow four separate groups and their storylines. Frodo and Sam, Aragorn, Legolas, Merry and Pippin, and the villains of the movie, Saruman and his army. The performances live well up to the standards of the first film. It's particularly notable performance of Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn, whose role is way larger here in the Two Towers. Like Aragorn in this movie, he satisfies a thirst for someone to root for, a thirst that's left unquenched and felt that you did briefly gain a bit in Fellowship, even though he didn't play much of a role in Fellowship until like the middle half of the film. It's much easier to root for Aragorn in this one than it kind of is for Frodo, since Aragorn's the one we see the most in this one. Aragorn has many more qualities of a leading man, a soldier, and a hero, and more than once did the audience. And filled mostly with the Academy voters, and you applaud the heroics of Aragorn. Then you have the creature Gollum, who also shines in this much welcomed role, especially with the realistic computer animation and a fine performance from the legend of mocap himself, Andy Serkis, which the animation is modeled after. In Fellowship, it's appropriate to consider Gollum one of the many great features of the film, but the thing is, though, he was just a brief role. You didn't really get to see him much more. They were just mostly mentions, just brief, tiny little shots, little shadowy shots, and and the last shot you see of him in Fellowship is him looking through that hole at the group, just watching Gandalf's conversation about that. And then just crawls away, and you don't see him for the rest of the movie. Here, now we get to see him in actual full appearance. And he's more of a leading character and a star in this one. And he has this convincing dual personality, stabbing voice, and well-choreographed body movements that make him considerably eye-grabbing and the center of focus of nearly every scene in which he appears. And there's also some new great characters and actors in this one. It's not just a Fellowship. We get some new members here. You have David Wenham, who's actually this underrated young star at the time of this one. And actually does almost look equivalent to Sean Bean, as technically both Faramir and Boromir are both brothers. And he does a great performance as Boromir. Bernard Hill also impressed me in this one. And he definitely did a better role in this movie than he did in Titanic, I will admit. And Viggo Mortensen gives an even better performance as Aragorn in this one, especially even more than the last movie. Yeah, and Ian McKellen and Christopher Lee are also more than great, but Morrison really put some passion and effort into this character in this one. This movie kind of feels a lot like it's Aragorn's movie more in this one, whereas Fellowship was mostly Frodo's film. This one is technically Aragorn's film. Like Sean. And also Sean Astin and Samwise Gamgee also does a great performance here, and the ending scene really shows it when he gives one of the best final speeches of cinema. And then when it comes to the characters of Gimli and Legolas, the strangest thing is Gimli and Legolas they're now changed into some comical sidekick characters. It's a little odd to see here where they kind of played more badass roles in the previous film. Here, they're kind of the comical sidekick characters in this one, but it really works. They provide some good comic relief at times when it's really needed. It's not overforced like many of the Marvel movies today seem to have this problem with doing. And the most fantastic thing about the movie is that it's really action-filled. The Battle of Helm's Deep, it's fantastic to see. And it's easily the best scene of the movie, where after you get through 2 hours of the Fellowship in separate groups, all trying to get to their goals, we finally now see that the Fellowship has arrived at Helm's Deep, and they're all getting ready for battle with the orcs. Right here. And where the Ents march to war. And the scenes with the Riders of Rohan is definitely also an amazing spectacle. And you remember those brief more about... And also, I think the best CGI thing of this movie is, believe it or not, the best CGI of the movie, my precious Gollum. This guy. The guy you saw on the wall, and now I'm going to hold him for this part. Right here, so poster does not block Gollum. Gollum is a CG masterpiece. He definitely adds some light in the incredibly dark movie. Like, he looks terrifying. He definitely does look terrifying. He's definitely a lot of times a terrifying character, but there's also times when he provides some very funny moments. It's kind of both creepy and funny at the same time. There's also some areas where you feel sorry for the poor guy, or you just want him dead. Like Gollum, or as he was once called, Smeagol, because if you're all familiar with Lord of the Rings, guys, he was once a hobbit named Smeagol, and he had first found that ring on his birthday and killed his cousin. And you're going to get more into that backstory in the next. That backstory could be another review, though, because that was going to be in two. Originally, the opening Gollum's backstory is going to be the opening scene of Two Towers, but Jackson felt it'd be better to show people that Gandalf the Grey had survived the fight with the monster in Fellowship. So he decided to make the dream. So he decided to make that the opening scene of Two Towers and save his guy's backstory for the opening scene of Return of the King. And he's the most diverse character you'll ever see in cinema history. And his CGI in Gollum today even still holds up far better than the CGI today for many things. And Elijah Wood in this one, he puts on while this is not mostly his film in this one, where this one's kind of just Aragorn's film. Despite that, though, he puts on an even better performance than he did in the first movie, and even more than the first film. The ring itself is also a character. The viewer could definitely see it wearing down Frodo, pushing him to the limit, tempting those around him. The other great performance as well was also Sean Astin and Viggo Mortensen. And Ian McKellen, who definitely captivated us in the last movie, he captivates us even more in this one as well. And the other actors in here, like John Rhys Davies as Gimli and Orlando Bloom as Legolas, they along with Viggo make a great trio. They laugh together, they cry together, they prosper together, and they suffer together. And the trio definitely give life to Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas. And also our new female character, Eowyn, expresses her emotions clearly through the performance of Miranda Otto. When it comes to the scope, The Two Towers is the biggest film in the trilogy in terms of scoping. The cinematography is one of the strongest assets, and the scenery, costumes, and lighting and makeup, especially on the orcs, all look very gorgeous. You can tell a lot of effort went into this, and it showed. The music is even darker, more complex, and the story is richer and compelling. The dialogue is thought-provoking. And more about the effects and fight scenes. They're easily some of the best fight scenes ever. And it's definitely bested by some of the effects in the third film of the series, though. They do get surpassed quick by Return of the King's fight scenes. The Gollum character and the battle for Helm's Deep are definitely the big standout examples of this movie as well. And also the battle for Helm's Deep, in short, finals battle, definitely one of the best battle scenes ever created in cinema history. And the well-paced and choreographed, and above all, editing in between the hectic battle sequences and scared citizens provides some emotional depth as well. And the gigantic battle isn't the only battle in the film. There's many other interesting battles, but I'm not going to spoil them, so you'll have to see the film for yourself if you haven't. The battles are consistent with the style, and it's definitely laid down in the first film, and it's simply on a much more epic scale. And I even love how the finale and battle together all this goes. Like, during that Helm's Deep battle, where after he falls off the cliff and is first person dead, Aragorn turns out to obviously still be alive, and he arrives at Helm's Deep, successfully finally able to warn Theoden of Saruman's army approaching. And Theoden arrives for battle despite being vastly outnumbered, and a company of Lothlorien elves arrive to aid the people of Rohan, shortly before Saruman's army attacks the fortress. And Uruk-hai Beach and the outer wall with explosives, and during the ensuing charge, it kills the elves' commander Haldir, and the defender retreat into the keep, where Aragorn convinces Theoden to meet the Uruk-hai in one last change. And at dawn, the defenders are overwhelmed, and Gandalf and Eomer arrive with the Rormir, and turning to the tide of the battle, the surviving Uruk-hai flee into the Faragorn forest, and are killed by the trees, led by Treebeard. And it seems like all is victorious. Helm's Deep battle has emerged victorious, but Gandalf also knows and warns the others that Sauron is going to retaliate when he learns about this. Right there. That's a cliffhanger part for Aragorn and Gandalf's parts. And we'll marry Pippin a little bit, but they haven't even reunited with Merry Pippin yet. When it comes to Frodo and Sam's part, During the finale of their story, Gollum leads Frodo and Sam from the Dead Marshes to the Black Gate, and recommends they enter Mordor though by another route. And Frodo and Sam then, sadly though, they get when it seems like Smeagol has finally freed himself from the Gollum personality, Frodo and Sam get captured by Rangers of Eowyn, led by Faramir and the younger brother of the late Boromir. Frodo though helps Faramir catch Gollum to save him from being killed by the Rangers. Learning the One Ring, Faramir takes his captives to Gondor to bring the ring to his father Denethor. And passing through the Byzantine city of Osgiliath, Frodo tries to explain to Faramir the true nature of the ring, and Sam explains that Boromir was driven mad by its power. And then a Nazgul arrives and nearly captures Frodo, who then falls under the ring's power, but Sam manages to save him in time, and he reminds the disheartened Frodo that they are fighting for the good still left in Middle Earth. And it's definitely one of the most well-acted moments of the series. You really feel the emotions in Sean Astin's performance in this very scene, as he gives one of the best speeches of the whole trilogy. Right there, and it's easily one of the trilogy's best moments. And I also love the shots where you see Gollum actually watching in emotion and sadness as he knows that he can't go back to being good anymore. He wishes he could. So Faramir is impressed by Frodo's resolve. He lets Frodo and Sam be on their way. Although in the extended edition, and I feel like this is an edition that should have been kept in here, and it kind of would have better have explained that Gollum deciding to betray them. More is that he realizes that Gollum's leading him to Mordor. In the extended edition, he strictly warns Frodo and Sam to not trust the creature and to be careful of his treachery. And when they're on their way, Faramir once again pushes down Gollum. In the extended edition only, though, he once again pushes down Gollum, and he pretty much warns him that he will kill him if anything bad happens to the two. If he hears of anything bad happening to the two. And I feel like that would have better explained Gollum deciding to actually feeling more and more betrayed. Right there. And so, once Frodo and Sam are now out back in the woods, Gollum is now obviously betrayed, and he's reverted back to the Gollum personality, and he's trying to think of a way to get revenge on Frodo and Sam, and he decides, Gollum gets the idea, he's gonna lead them to her. If you know who I am talking about when he says her on rewatch. Upon arriving at Cirith Ungol. And yeah, so he pretends to go back to the Smeagol personality and looking for him. He's like, come on, there's still a long way to go, hobbits. Smeagol will take you there. Follow me. And yeah. And then you get this really chilling final shot of Mordor and the Nazgul flying over it to end the movie right there. And it's a really chilling shot. It shows you that they're almost there. So I love how much of a chilling third entry setup this is, and it doesn't feel too pretentiously obvious. Helm's Deep the Helm's Deep battle, the good guys were victorious in the battle, but the problem is though, Sauron's gonna know everything that happened, and he is gonna get back at them angry and viciously for what happened that night, and he'll now have an even larger army than ever before. Gollum or Smeagol now feels betrayed by Frodo, and he's going to be leading Frodo and Sam to the creature named Shelob to kill them in retaliation and reclaim the ring for himself. And we get that chilling final shot of Mordor and Mount Doom. And it's meant to show that Frodo and Sam are getting closer and closer to the location, and their quest is soon going to finally be over. But that is though, they're getting led to a different, deadlier direction by Gollum. But, of course, we all have to wait. But of course, knowing when people first saw us in 2002, they all had to wait till 2003 for the next movie to see it all happen and the ring to be finally destroyed. It's a very great setup for what is going to be the second greatest film in cinema history, which would be the next film to come out. Now, would there be a bad quality for the Two Towers? Maybe just one minor one that prevents it from being slightly as great as Fellowship or Return. The thing is, this is still a masterpiece in cinema, but there are times when the pacing in Frodo and Sam scenes kind of feels a little bit off, or a bit dragged on a bit, and we kind of have to wait a while to get to Helm's Deep, but that would be about it. Because regardless, The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers is still a massively great cinematic achievement in the film industry that will always be cherished for generations to come. So, in the end, The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers is another worth watching buy for fans of this book series and cinema lovers and fantasy buffs that want to see the journey of the Fellowship of the Ring continue from where we last saw them and see some exciting battles. Anyways, that's it for my review of Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. If you're wondering how I'm going to rank The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, here's how I am going to rank this movie. So overall, if you are a massive fan of Fellowship cinema and fantasy and are excited to see how the series continues on, then totally watch it by The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers for your collection for sure, no doubt. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, I am going to give The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers a 9.5 out of 10. There we go. That wraps up my review for The Two Towers. So, that leaves us with one more film in this trilogy to do to end off the rewatch series of 2023. It'll be the final. It'll be closing off all the franchise rewatches of 2023. And 2024 will begin with the prequel series, The Hobbit. But the next one is finally going to be coming. As you all know, the next one is my second favorite movie of all time in cinema. Until then, guys, that'll be it for this review. Thank you all for watching. If you like this, want to see more, and don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.